Hey everyone, how you doing? My name is Kyle Peterson. I'm the Culinary Arts Director at for the Silver Fork program at Center on Halstead.
I am the Culinary Instructor for the Silver Fork program here at Center on Halstead.
So we thought we'd do something different since Cindy and I are both on site again and back in the kitchen. So we are going to do a co-production today for you, part of our virtual learning, and we're going to be making something today that we're going to be doing together. And what we're hoping is that when you see this recipe, it is something that you could do with your friends, your family. It's kind of like one of those things like many hands make light work, and especially when the set of hands you like being next to, so yeah. So what we're going to make today is empanadas. For this we're going to be bouncing back and forth on some prep. And actually what I'm going to go do right now, and I'm going to leave it to my colleague here, I'm going to go start on the prep. So I will see everyone in a second.
All right, while Chef Kyle gets ready, I'm going to talk to you about empanadas. Now, empanadas are Latin-style dumpling. It's in the dumpling family. When you think about dumplings, maybe you think about like pot stickers or dim sum or pierogies, because we're in Chicago, right? But empanadas are also in that family. The thing that makes them a little bit different is that they're usually like a bread outside. So it can be a pastry, a puff pastry, a pie dough style. In our case, we're going to make Colombian style empanadas. Colombian ones are different from Salvadorian ones, from Mexican ones, from whatever. They're all a little bit different, but they're essentially the same deal. There's a dough, a pastry of some kind. They either get baked or fried. Right? Ours are going to be fried today, and we're going to make two sauces that go along with it. So Chef Kyle and I are going to bounce back and forth, but again, this is something that is really fun to do. You can make a lot of them ahead of time, freeze them, have them ready, whatever it is. Show you some new techniques, and a lot of the techniques you should already know or are learning now. All right, so let's get started.
Cool, all right. So like I said, I walked off camera because I wanted to start getting some prep ready. I'm gonna go over the ingredients of what we're working with for the filling. The filling is probably, most of the time, is gonna be the first thing you wanna get done, because the filling, it needs to get cooked and cooled, right? And there's a lot of chopping. So the way we're doing this today is everything is kind of in the natural way of almost how you would do it. Is, you know, we're gonna start on the filling, and then Chef Cindy's gonna work on the dough, and then we're gonna finish by doing the sauces, which are kind of pretty easy overall to make. So first off, so we have ground beef. It's very lean. Okay? You don't want to have stuff that's too fatty. If it's too fatty and you don't get that greasiness out, the greasiness kind of sticks in the filling, and then once that filling is reheated, that grease kind of seeps out, can kind of shoot out, can kind of burn your mouth, right? It's not ideal. So a little trick that Chef Cindy just taught me, right? The more you know, the more you grow, right? Is for tenderizing the meat. So you know when you cook ground beef and you're breaking it up and it starts to kind of like get the little pebbles, right? Like really small bits. Sometimes it'll get dry, right? So what I learned is if we take about 2 tablespoons of water, and we take about 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and all I'm doing right now, you know, it's not a lot, right? All I'm doing is just making sure those big chunks are broken up. And I'm going to put this in the water, kind of like almost like if you're in the class or if you've done it before, kind of like a slurry. I mean, it's not going to create a slurry, but all I'm doing is wanting to dissolve this. Like I said, it's good to have gloves. You don't need them, but it's kind of helpful. We've got a ton of them. So I'm going to put this in. And then all I'm going to do is mix, okay? As this mix, like Chef Cindy told me, it's science, right? It's going to sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. You can let it sit longer. It won't really affect it too much, but I mean, this is not something you want to do like the day ahead or anything, you know? So all we're doing is mixing that, making sure that gets incorporated, okay? And that's about it, right? So this meat, we're just going to have, so I'm going to take my gloves off. Okay, that's it. It's all mixed. It doesn't look any different, right? We're not adding a copious amount of water where it becomes like runny or soupy or anything. It's just a little bit. The meat will naturally kind of absorb it, and like you can see, it's not falling. It's not liquid or anything. So that's the main part of the filling, right? We are making beef empanadas. So empanadas. See, I have to catch myself. That's why Chef Cindy did the intro part where she could talk about them, because she knows how to say it and I don't. Okay, so the rest of it. What we have here is we have one Yukon Gold potato, about 6 to 8 ounces, right? This is peeled and it is cut. Not small, not large, just like, it doesn't have to be exact. This is gonna be mashed at the end of the day. So that's cooked in salted water, bring it up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, cook until it's tender, drain it, and that's it, right? And then we wanna keep this room temp warm, right? You know, you don't want it to be ice cold. We got about a half onion here, which is small dice, okay? We have about a tablespoon, but it's like 1 scallion, which is pretty finely minced, okay? Really small. And then we have about teaspoon and a half of sweet paprika. And the last thing I'm just gonna do really quick right now is grate a tomato. So I was telling Chef Cindy about this the other day, that this is the first time, like, I learned how to do this like 5 years ago. Like, I never saw this before and my mind was like blown. I was actually working alongside a Spanish chef, and we were making pan con tomate, which is a traditional Spanish, very simple tapas style thing. But so anyway, this is a, I believe, a beefsteak tomato, okay? So I already cut it because I didn't have the cutting board here. So I just cut it in half across what we would consider the equator, right? Open it up. And then on the large grate of a grater, put a bowl underneath. All we're gonna do is we're gonna grate this. And what this is gonna do is this is gonna grate the flesh of the tomato and the pulp of the tomato. And it's also going to extract the juice of the tomato. And when I first learned how to do this, why I said it was like mind-blowing, the peel doesn't get in there. It just naturally like cuts, and the peel acts as almost like a little guard for your hand. Don't know who thought of this, but from learning it 5 years ago, I was like, wow, this is genius. So we're actually gonna do this later with another recipe too, with one of the sauces. But yeah, all you're doing, you're using it, and I'll show you. Sorry, my hands got a little wet, but okay. So, and then what we have is, we have basically, it's like juice, right? But it's pulpy, right? So like, you know, there's tons of recipes for this, but like I said, when I was working alongside the Spanish chef, like pan con tomate, which is the Spanish tapas, it's just like you have a piece of grilled bread, or it doesn't have to be grilled, but a piece of bread. Take this, and you can mix in some really quality good olive oil, and as you mix it in, the olive oil kind of helps thicken it just a little bit. Salt, pepper, you can throw some chives, you can throw a little garlic in there. Super, super simple, but really, really, really good, especially if you have really high quality tomatoes that are in season. So those are the ingredients, and that is it. And you might say, it's like, wow, that's not a lot of ingredients. It isn't a lot of ingredients. It's going to be flavorful. It's going to taste really, really good. But we're going to have 2 different sauces that are going to be really bold, and those are going to create additional layers of flavor. So we don't want to put too much stuff in here that would kind of mask anything else. It would kind of be almost to the point of too many flavors and kind of clashing. So this is, I'm not saying it's bland, it's just very straightforward and simple, right? We're just having basically onions, paprika, tomato product, potatoes, and beef. Okay, so after that, I'm gonna show you how to cook it all up. All right, cool. So, like I said, we have our ingredients, and now we're gonna get our filling made. So, a couple things we're gonna do first. First thing, let's get the pan going. Like, let's get it hot. We want this to be hot. We've discussed this in class, but just in case, you know, pan needs to be hot. If your pan's not hot, we're making empanadas, no bueno. Okay, so here we have the meat. It's been sitting here 15 minutes, okay? As you can see from earlier, nothing's really changed, right? We added water and baking soda to this, but nothing's really changed. It still looks like ground meat, right? That's absolutely fine. Okay, remember the potatoes we talked about, right? Peeled, cut just roughly, brought to a boil in salted water and simmered until they're tender. Cool, so we got these. We have this little handy thing, this is called a half hotel pan, okay? It's 4-inch sheet. If you have a baking dish, I mean, You could use a mixing bowl too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in here, okay? And just kind of, you know, spread them out. I mean, there's not a ton of them. All right, and these are, you know, these are like at room temperature. My goal is what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this mix, and then I'm going to pour the mix on top of the potatoes, right? That is going to heat the potatoes even more and make them easier to mash, because what I'm basically doing, these don't have to be mashed like purely like mashed potatoes, right? But these potatoes are going to act as a binder, right, and hold everything together. If you didn't have the potatoes, I mean, I've seen it done without potatoes, but this is a way so when you make the empanada and you cut into it or bite into it, stuff is just not crumbling out of it, right? It's like holding a shape, it's holding together. So that is the rationale behind the potatoes. So the pan is getting hot, ouchie hot, okay? Put some grapeseed oil, okay? So it's like shimmering, okay? And then wooden spoon, okay? And then just be careful. So you don't want to just like drop it in there, okay? That would be super no good, okay? I always have a towel on me, okay? Okay, so. And what I'm doing now is I'm breaking this up and I'm browning it. It'll brown really, really quick. Now I don't need to cook this 100 in this where it is right now. I do not need to cook it 100%. Like it doesn't need to be cooked through yet, because we're going to add other items to it and it can continue cooking. But what we do want to make sure that we're doing is we're like breaking it up. If we don't break it up and we add other things to it, it's just going to cook in a giant kind of piece, and that's not what we want either. Okay. So I make, a lot of times I make chili at home, or some type of bolognese, or meat-based sauce. But I tell you, it's been a while since I've been in this kitchen. This burner is a lot hotter than the one at home. So yeah, so I'm just breaking it up. Now if there's a little bit that sticks to the bottom of the pan, okay, there's a little bit, that's okay. It's sticking, but it'll come off if you try. But the other thing too is we're going to be adding liquid to this, which will help bring up that bit of that stuff that's stuck. Sometimes we call that the fond. Just putting this down. Whew, hot burner. After making all those virtual videos at my house, you know, with my rudimentary little basic kitchen, now to be back with something that's actually got some BTUs to it, it's kind of a shock. Okay, so we're almost there, right? You can go like this. Just to kind of break it up a little more. Like I said, it doesn't have to be like super fine, but you just don't want any really large chunks in there. Like, you know, that's a pretty big chunk to kind of get in there. Also, you know, as this stuff cooks more, and I'll show you this later, this stuff cooks more, and then we're gonna put it with the potatoes. Then we're gonna like take a fork and we're gonna kind of like mash it even more, so it kind of folds in. So we'll get possibly a little bit more breaking up then too. Okay. Okay, so there's still some pink spots, right? It's not completely cooked through. That's okay. So now we're going to add onion. And that onion is small dice. Okay. We're going to add the scallion. Like I said, it's about 1 scallion, really finely chopped. Okay. I'm going to mix this up. Now, we do not want to brown these onions, okay? We want to use the heat from the pan to kind of cook them for like a minute or so till they're a little translucent. So, the reason I added the onion and the scallion first and mix it up. So now I'm going to add the paprika. I didn't just want to dump the paprika in because maybe it sticks to the onions a little bit more. I mean, it's very random. It would be a random circumstance that would happen, but. Okay. So it's smelling, it's smelling awesome, right? It's beef and onions, right? But it's very simple too. And the paprika is going to come out. The paprika is going to hit the little bit of oil. It's going to start coming out. Now, right now, I'm not going to go a ton, but I am going to give it just a little bit of salt, okay? And just a couple turns of pepper, not a ton, right? Because we are going to want to season this more at the end, right? But a lot of times doing dishes or doing items like this, you do want to season a little bit in stages, okay? So I can kind of see the onions are softening up, okay? They are absorbing some of the oil that was left in the pan, and they are absorbing some of the moisture that was in the pan. Like I said, these don't need to be cooked they don't need to be super, super soft, right? You want something with a little bit of texture. So now, remember our tomato that we grated, okay? We're gonna throw this in. Okay, we're just gonna move this around. And I know I said this earlier, like when I was making, it's like, oh, we're gonna keep it really simple, because we have these sauces that are really gonna be bold and flavorful. But I'll tell you, like cooking stuff like this, honestly, like sometimes it really is just like simplicity, just like it really comes out, right? You're not masking any flavors. Right now I'm just smelling, tomatoes, ground beef, paprika, and onion. And, big surprise, it smells freaking awesome. So, now we do want to cook this, okay, till it's pretty dry, right? We've tossed around the term like au sec, in French cooking, which means dry. We still have some bubbles coming up here, but we have to remember we're not just putting pure tomato juice or liquid in there. There's pulp too. So as this kind of cooks, right? We do want to make sure it doesn't get overtly dry, like overly dry too quickly, because we don't want it to scorch. And some of that liquid will help get the fond off the bottom. But see, that's it, Some recipes will say, oh, do it for 10 minutes. Oh, do it for 5 minutes, do it for 10 minutes. Just kind of use best judgment, Like right now I'm looking at this, we're really almost there, right? Like when I'm moving from side to side, I'm not seeing a puddle of liquid right here. I'm just seeing a little bit. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, right, it's pretty dry, right? Dry being a relative term, right? We don't want it deathly, like I said, we don't want it overtly dry. But, okay, potatoes, right? Turn this off. Oh, man, I can never can't really do hot stuff with the right hand for some reason. Okay. Try to get this pan out of the way so you can see. Okay. Steaming hot, okay? Now, what I'm doing, I think you'll be able to see what I'm doing here, right? Taking a fork, and I'm mashing the potato. Okay. The heat is softening it, you know, making it easier to work with even more. And as I do this, I'm feeling it. I'm breaking up a little of the beef. Oops. I will tell you, after a while of doing this, you really can feel it in your forefinger and your forearm. And I've only been doing it for like 45 seconds. So, breaking this up, you know, I don't know. Does it need to be completely smooth? No, not really, right? What we're looking for, basically, is just so it binds, right? And I don't know if you can tell, but like you can see, like it's starting to become, you know, not like a paste. It's hard to describe, but it's just coming together more, right? Is it okay if there's probably like a couple of small chunks of potato in here? Probably, yeah. That's not a big deal. Like I said, you just want to make sure that you're aggravating. Well, that's an interesting word to use, but you're like aggravating the starch, you know, so it's starting to adhere to the potato. You just keep going through and just making sure there's no large chunks of potato. This smells really, really, really good, and it's already looking good. I think of like in the past, like eating empanadas, and like this is exactly like the filling. So cool. You can take the fork, just put it there. Take the same spoon. Now, mind you, this is, as you can see, the steam is still coming up, and so it's hot, but you can kind of see how, like, when you're pushing it over to one side, it's coming together in what looks like a filling, okay? So, you know, what we're doing today, this is like beef and potato. You know, the amount of recipes out there are endless, right? You can put a ton of stuff in there. I'm sure right now, you know, we could put chopped cilantro. I'm sure in some recipes they might have like chopped nuts or maybe like some dried fruit or something. So there's a lot of varieties, you know. You can do a lot of different things with it. But so that's where we're at. Yeah. And now the final part, I'm just mixing it a little more with the spoon. And now the final part is the best part. Just a little taste. Oops. Okay, so in all reality, that's killer. It's so good. It's super simple. It does need just a little salt, right? Just a little, not a ton. And maybe a shot of pepper. Okay. Now, in this little container, right, that we have, don't worry about transferring it, nothing like that. Okay, we're gonna mix the salt up. Now it's hot, right? It's still hot right now. Now we wanna kind of cool it down, right? We don't wanna be packing hot filling into a dough. That's not good. So all I'm doing is just kind of mashing it down and spreading it out so it'll cool down quicker. And just out of pure fun, it's always fun to reference my time with the Spanish chef. Okay, so it's metal under here, right? Metal on metal, right? The heat's not escaping. If you want, you take a spoon, go like that. It's a little trick. And then now airflow is going under, and now it'll cool down faster. So there we go with the filling. It's cooling down. It tastes delicious. And now I'm going to send it back over to my colleague, Chef Cindy, and she's going to start working on the dough.
All right, so while our filling is cooling down, I'm gonna make the masa that goes on the outside. So what I have here is 3 cups of masa mix, dry masa mix, which is this stuff right here. You can find it pretty much anywhere, different sizes. This stuff is great to have around. This is what you make tortillas out of. If you can't find the fresh stuff that's milled at Latin stores, this is your go-to for sure. Okay, so it's just 3 cups of this. It is like a cornmeal mix. It's very, very basic. So again, I got 3 cups in a really big bowl. I want lots of space that I can mix because I'm going to do this all by hand. All right, I have 4 cups of room temperature water. I'm going to start out by putting 3 cups in. I have the extra cup just in case I need it. Okay, so the reason that is, right, just like we've talked about with pie dough or anything like that, it depends on the day, it depends on the mix. Sometimes it needs a little more water, sometimes it needs a little less, right? So it's good to just have a little bit of extra. And see, I'm just using my fingers, gotta get it hydrated. That's only about 1 cup that's in there. All right, and I can smell it, it smells like home. That tortilla should smell like fresh tortillas. And if you've never had some, go get yourself some fresh tortillas, guys. All right. I've got about 2 cups. I think it definitely is going to need just those 3. All right, and I'm making sure that this all comes together as one cohesive dough. Oh yeah, that looks good. I don't think I'll need that extra bit. But again, you never know. Some, for whatever reason, if it's a dry day, you just might need a little bit more. You know, it also depends on what you're making. If you're making tortillas, sometimes you want it a little bit wetter. If you're making something like pupusas, which is Salvadorian, right? So you see how I'm kind of creating this ball here. And one of the other ways you can check to see if it's wet enough or moist enough is if you could take a little bit in your hand and then just kind of press it. And if there aren't a ton of cracks around the edge, that means your dough is nicely hydrated. Right? If it was really cracky, I might add some more water, but this looks really nice, right? I can feel how tender it is, right? So all I'm gonna do is, I'm just making sure I get all the stuff around the edge. I'm just gonna make a nice little ball. And you wanna let this sit, no matter what you're making with this dough, you wanna let it sit for about 15 minutes, at least, room temperature, right? And what that does is, it definitely gets everything hydrated, and it helps develop that like masa flavor that you want. All right, so it's really important that you let it sit. Again, you want those flavors to develop just a little bit and really rehydrate, okay? So about 15 minutes, we're gonna let that hang out, and then I'm gonna show you how to make them. Okay, now, so it's been about 15 minutes, or we let the dough sit for about 15 minutes, room temperature, and then I went ahead and balled them up just so that they're ready to go. And I have a little bit of plastic on top, right, just to keep them from drying out while I work with them. And it helps to have them already kind of pre-sized like this so you can just kind of keep working, all right? So I've got my balls here. I've got about 22, I think. All right, I've got the filling. It's cooled down now, all right? The other piece of special equipment that you're gonna need is a tortilla press. I highly, highly recommend it for this. It gets them nice and even. This guy was probably about 15 bucks. You can do them by hand for sure, but the tortilla press makes it so much easier. Right, the other thing you're gonna need is I've just taken a Ziploc bag and I cut it, so I have these 2 pieces, right? You don't wanna put it straight on here without any protection because it'll stick to this. It's really hard to pull up from there. It's a total disaster. So I always use a Ziploc bag. Sometimes you can use those produce bags that you get at the store when you're picking out your lettuce or whatever. Parchment, I'm sure works. I've never used it, but I can't imagine it won't work. All right, so I've balled my dough. They're about an ounce and a half, right? I just waited so we could know what size. All right, golf ball size is your best bet, okay? Make it into a nice little ball. Okay. You're gonna put it down right in the middle. You're going to put your other piece, plastic on top. And then this press is pretty heavy. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it fall. And then I'm going to take the handle and just give it a very gentle press. Open it up. And then we have our nice round there. Actually, I feel like I could get that a little bit thinner. A little more spread out there. There we go. Okay. See now how easily I could pick that up? Okay. So then I'm going to take one of these layers off. All right. You can do this a couple ways. You can take it off the plastic, if that helps. All right, or you can do it with the plastic on. I'm going to take the plastic off myself because it makes it easier for me. Okay, just be careful, it is thin. And then you're going to take a spoon. All right, probably about a tablespoon, I guess, maybe a little less, depending on what size you make them. That's really what it comes down to. Okay, you don't want it so full that you can't close it properly, but you don't want it so little that you don't have any filling. That's really sad. All right, so there's a couple ways you can close this. I was talking too much, so it looks a little disastrous right now. But, okay, if you get any cracks like this, it's okay, don't worry about it. This dough is pretty soft, so you can cover them up pretty easily. All right, so one of the ways I like to do this is I will crimp it around the edge. All right, it kind of sticks to itself already. This is more decorative than anything else, but you still want to make sure, right, that the edge is really well sealed. Also, if you have a little extra around the edge, then you can cover these spots up, no problem. No one will know. Okay, here's that. Then onto a pan. Now from here you don't have to cover them. That looks crazy. From here you don't have to cover them because we're going to deep fry them, so if they dry out a little bit, it's okay, but just when you're working with the dough. All right, so let's do another one. All right, another golf ball size. Put it right in the middle here. Drop that down. All right, just the weight of that. Give it a little bit of a press. Maybe a tiny bit more. I'm being a little too gentle right now. All right. Oops. That one was crazy. Again, it's pretty forgiving, so don't worry. All right. So this time I'll leave it in here so you can see that version. Again, you're going to take a small amount of filling. All right, about a tablespoon. You just eyeball it. Okay. And then with the plastic, you just want to close it up. All right. Smooth it out. Make sure those edges are closed up. All right. And then from there you can just peel it and put it onto your sheep. Ta-da! So there you go. That's the one I just did. Okay, that's the crimped one I did. It looks horrible, but it's okay. All right. You can even take, all right, I know it's pretty well sealed, but you can also take a fork, kind of gently go around the edge. All right. If you're making different fillings, this is kind of a nice way to indicate, okay, well, the one I used with the fork, crimping, that one's the beef. I'll do a different fold with the chicken, something like that. All right. So Chef Kyle are going to bang these out, then we're going to show you how to cook them off. Okay, so Chef Kyle and I just finished up making, well, mostly Chef Kyle, finished forming all of them. Okay, laid out. So now I've got my fryer. Okay, it is set to 350. Okay, I've got my sheet pan lined with paper towels. All right, so my basket's in here. And I'm just going to do about 3 at a time. Okay. Now, because our filling is cooked already, all we're doing is trying to get that outside golden brown delicious, all right? So, remember, whenever you put something, especially deep fat frying, you want to get up pretty close to that oil, hold it for a second so it settles, and let go. Not from far up, okay, because you're more likely to burn yourself that way, okay? So again, just drop it in, get real close to that oil, let it float back in there. Okay. So again, 3 of these. You don't want to overfill your fryer. Couple of reasons. One, if you overfill it, you're dropping the temperature and they'll end up more soggy rather than crispy. For frying, we want crispy. Okay. The other thing is if you're stacking them up or overfilling it that way, right? Again, they're not going to cook evenly. And the other reason is if you're doing this like maybe in a Dutch oven or a nice big pot, right? If you overfill it, that oil will rise up to the top and you're more likely to have it boil over with oil. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. All right, so I've dropped them in and I'm just giving them a shake, right? Okay, so I know that they're not sticking to the bottom of the basket. All right, we're watching the bubbles. All right, once the bubbles kind of slow down, we'll take a look at them. All right now, they're pretty pale white-ish colored. All right, again, so it makes it easy. We're gonna go golden brown delicious. All right, we're not trying to cook the inside. We're just trying to get that outside nice and crisp. And this will vary. It depends if your oil is up to temperature. It depends how many you're putting in. Depends how big your pot is, right? So we're just gonna watch this for, it's probably gonna take 2 minutes, okay? But again, I like to make sure I shake it every so often to make sure that they are not sticking, right? If you're seeing big bubbles or a lot, or like one stream of bubbles coming out, that probably means it's busted open. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. Just know that that's what's happening. That's why you want to make sure that they're sealed all around. Towards the end there, Chef Kyle really nailed it down there, right? Good shape, no patches, right? Again, if you see darker spots, like right here, okay? I just took some extra dough from the corners and just with wet fingers, just kind of patch them up, right? You just want to make sure that there's no super thin areas so that it busts open while you're frying. All right, ooh, we're getting there. We're getting there. And just so you know too, you can go from like 350 to 370 between these guys, okay? You don't want to go too much higher than that. But I can hear them. I don't know if you can hear them. Bubbling away. Yeah. Also, if you like, you can get this dough mix more of a yellow color too, if you prefer that yellowy color to your corn. That's fine too. And that kind of helps with the presentation of like golden brown. Delicious. So my bubbles are slowing down, which is good. It's a good sign. And again, I'm going to keep saying it. Remember that the filling is cooked. We're just trying to golden brown delicious the outside. Oh yeah, I think that looks great. All right, so now we're going to shake off the excess. All right. If you're doing this, again, in a Dutch oven, make sure you have like a tongs or a slotted situation. Ideally a spider, honestly, something that's wiry and you can pull things out. All right. And then I'm just going to put them right onto our sheet pan with paper towels, and we're just going to let any extra bit of oil come off so that they're not greasy. Okay. So now I'm going to keep going on these, and Chef Kyle's going to do the sauces that are going to go with it.
So cool. So Chef Cindy is in the process of frying off the empanadas. Okay, so now we're going to make 2 sauces. Okay, so sometimes just to go over it, one sauce might be enough. But as Chef Cindy was mentioning earlier about, we were talking about dumplings and then empanadas and things like that. A lot of times when you have stuff like this, fried goodies like this or steamed goodies, a lot of times if you think about restaurants you go to, you're going to have like a couple different types. So you might have one that is a little more spicy. You might have one that's a little more sweet. So we're going to be making 2. One of them is just going to have it's going to be just like fresh vegetable base with a little bit of oil and seasoning. The other one is going to have a little of mayonnaise and cheese in it. So I'll show you that one later. The first one, this one is called aji. Aji is spelled A-J-I. Okay, so I was just reading up and making sure about this. That's just kind of also like a Colombian word for, or they use in Colombia that use that word for pepper. They do the same thing in Peru. Actually, we pulled this stuff out. So if you can see, ají amarillo, yellow chili. This is a Peruvian chili paste. This stuff is really, really good. There's a few other variations of it, but just so you can see, like the use of the word ají is very widespread. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. So first thing, I have cilantro. I have jalapeno, I've got some stuff, but I want to start with cilantro, right? So the recipe, what we're doing is we're going to mince everything, okay? Knife, sharp, okay, cilantro. When we mince, right, we're not just going to look at this pile and say, okay? While we are mincing it, we don't, if we do it haphazardly, we might end up bruising it, right? And it won't be good. So basically, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of like a rough chiffonade, which is kind of like thinly sliced. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the cilantro and I'm just putting on top of each other, right? Like I said, thinly sliced. We are not looking for exact, like has to be a millimeter thin, right? But so now it's just bunched. Now you can see, okay, it's thin. Okay. See, that's kind of thin, right? Like I said, this one's a little thicker. That's fine. Okay. All we are trying to do is just kind of do this once through. Actually, it'll be a twice through. Once to get it where we want it to be. But first, once again, just kind of packing it, holding it in your forefingers and thumb. Okay. Once more. This is gonna be a nice. This is gonna be a nice bushel of sauce, whatever. I don't know. So, okay, thinly sliced, thinly sliced. Okay, now. Also now I'm trying to go in kind of a slightly forward rocking motion, not just straight up and down. Okay, now, so we have a chiffonade that's kind of going this way. We're just going to take this and we're just going to rotate it, right? And then we're going to go another time through. So we're basically taking what was a thin, we're just going perpendicular to our other thin slice in the same way, okay? This is basically how I always chop herbs. All the time. Like for the most part, I always go chiffonade one way, turn it, and then chiffonade the other way. And then from there, I go as far as the recipe or as far as I want, you know. Sometimes I don't necessarily want to pulverize. I mean, a lot of times I'll end up cutting herbs like kind of rustically, right? So there's that, right? Is it minced yet? No, it's not minced yet. But we went through 2 times, you know, each way, and we got it, you know, relatively small. So now I'm going to run my knife through, and now I'm going to start mincing this. Now this recipe calls for a few other things, which I do already have prepped, and I'm going to show, actually Chef Cindy and I were talking about this and wanted to show this other kind of technique that the recipe didn't call for, but it's not going to affect it too much. So, getting the cilantro. Okay, one other thing I got, okay. Did this before, went and got ahead. Remember this? This was the grated tomato. This is half a tomato. The same way we did it for the empanada filling, right? Just the grated tomatoes, right? The skin protects it. So that's in a bowl already. So now what I'm gonna do, so I have the cilantro, right? Is it completely minced? Yeah, it could go a little more. But this is something I'm gonna do. So now, all right, so now I have the cilantro on the cutting board. A couple things, right? Mincing it up. You saw we talked about going chiffonade one way, then chiffonade the other, and then start going through. There's a few factors in that. One being, all right, first, the cilantro that we had was already picked, and it was in a container, and it was already kind of dry. That's very crucial. You do not want to chop wet herbs. Then that doesn't mean they need to be bone dry, but you do not want too much. You do not want too much moisture on them because they'll turn to mush. The other one too is by mincing the cilantro this way, right, and not just going to town, like not just start hacking away at it. You'll see the cutting board, while it is green a little, which is natural, it's not like overtly green, right? There's not like a big green kind of smush, right, or like puddle, so to speak, right there, which is kind of like all the oils and the flavor coming out of the cilantro. And it's the same thing with parsley. It's the same thing with a lot of herbs, right? Do you ever see anyone chop herbs over and over and over again? And then the cutting board is all green and tinted. That's kind of like all the flavor and stuff going through. And what I'm going to show you is this is another way to kind of avoid it. So what we have here, we have cilantro, pretty well minced, but not completely done yet. This is going to be part of the recipe, or this is going to be something I'm going to show you that's actually not part of the recipe, but it's something that I thought would work really well with this. So, cilantro, oh my gosh. Oops, I just knocked some. So anyway, so we're going to just pretend that never happened. Or maybe the magic of video will make it not happen. So anyway, we're going to take the jalapeno, right? It's already minced. We've got scallion. It's already minced, right? So we're already like half, pretty much 75% of the way there. Onion, right? Really small mince, okay? I'm going to put this all on the cutting board, right? I know this seems really, really weird, but trust me, okay? Now what I'm going to focus on is kind of bringing this all together, right? So I'm not like going to really chop like really hard. I'm just kind of mixing this, okay? Now remember what I was saying about how the cutting board's not really green, right? Now if I just keep chopping, it will get green because all you're doing is kind of pulverizing the herbs even more. So I'm mixing this all up on the cutting board. Okay. Boom. Right? There's that. Like I said, the recipe doesn't call for it, but this technique is kind of great. Okay, oil. Okay. Oil's kind of soaking in. And now you can kind of mince everything together. And this is going to be another way to just kind of bring the flavors together. And like you can mix it, right, like in a cutting bowl or in a mixing bowl. And yes, the flavors will come together. But this is actually, you're breaking the onion up, you're breaking the jalapeno up, and you're breaking the scallion up even more. And then the same with the cilantro. So you're really, at the end of the day, really kind of mending the flavors even more. And because you have that oil on there, what that oil does is it coats everything, including the cilantro. So as you keep chopping, right, you are preventing the flavor and the pigment of the cilantro from going into the cutting board because it's staying completely suspended in all the oil. Okay. So once again, I hope that makes sense, right? I'm putting all this on the cutting board. Yes, it was already chopped once through, but as I chop it again, I'm actually breaking up the onion, I'm actually breaking up the jalapeno, I'm actually breaking up the scallion, and breaking up the cilantro even more, so their flavors are kind of mingling, and then the oil is acting as like a little vehicle. It's almost like kind of co-marinating them. I don't know the word, if that's a proper word, but it's one I just made up and we'll work with that. So, okay. Same thing, right? So I just took a knife, I just went through it. There's no additional green on the cutting board, okay? So, it's that oil's really, I've worked at restaurants where we made pestos this way. Kind of, it's a really old school way of doing it. So, here's my little mix. I'm gonna take this, just very carefully, right? On a side note, it's not really important, but you know, if you're ever at home watching TV and they try and sell you these bendable cutting boards, don't do it. Just get a good one. Don't waste your time or your money with those. They're silly. Okay? Okay? All right. So now, some salt. Some pepper. Now, this kind of looks like just like kind of almost salsa, right? Not salsa, but like, you know, like a relish almost. And actually the point of this is not to be so relishy. It's actually meant to be a little bit looser. So we can add a little bit of water. Because you want to think, like, you want this to be able to dip. Yeah. You want to be able to have this dip. Okay. Now it's still, you know, it's chunky, whatever. Now traditionally it just depends. Like, you know, cuisines are different. They have their different way of doing it. This recipe says, they specifically say they want it to be thin, right? So I'm also, the last bit of boldness to this sauce is lime juice. Okay, so now you can kind of see. I mean, it's chunky, but I don't want to, sorry, I don't want to. It's good. I almost think, based on the way the recipe reads, it could be a little thinner, but actually what I want to do is, I just put a little more salt in there. I actually want to see how this comes together and marinates, because salt will draw out some additional moisture from the vegetables. But as you can see, like once you put it in the bowl, like you can kind of see, like you put your spoon in, and the first thing that if you gently put, it's thin, right? It's not incredibly thick. I mean, it tastes really, really good. So I'm just gonna let this sit. As this sits, that salt might draw out a little more moisture, okay? But yeah, so that's the first sauce, the ají sauce. All right, so I had to show you how to make the first sauce for our empanadas, right? Which was called ají. The second one is called ají verde. However, you might seem a little weird, because this ají that I made first time, it's very green. So Chef Cindy and I talked about that. You know, we didn't come to an exact consensus, but the name of this recipe is, as we found it, was ají verde. So it has some of the similar ingredients as the first one we made, most notably jalapenos, cilantro, and lime. Okay. The different ingredients it has is no tomato. It has mayonnaise, cotija cheese, and garlic. So, like I said before, so when we have something like this, like whether it's empanadas or dumplings or something, you're going to have a variety of sauces. I mean, ideally, that's just, a lot of times that's how it's served, right? Like I was saying earlier, sometimes it might be spicy, sweet, herbaceous. What we're going with here is we're going with sauces, we're going with sauces that are really like bright and bold and kind of like really forward flavor. Like I said before, when we were making the empanada filling, it's delicious. It tastes really, really good, but nothing is too assertive. So this, obviously by ratios, when you take a bite of an empanada, you're gonna have 80% of the bite you're taking is empanada, 20% is sauce. So that 20%, we want it to be like really bold and forward flavor. So the first one we have, it's really kind of limey, and it's really chopped fresh onion, almost like kind of like a pico de gallo relish kind of style. This one is going to be creamy because of the mayo. So the first thing I'm going to throw in, I have some minced garlic. Okay, that is going to go in. And one thing I'm going to actually do a little different on this recipe, it's not crazy different, but kind of like just that little audible with the other one, is I'm going to blend a few ingredients before I add other stuff in. Okay, just some thinly sliced jalapeno, like doesn't need to be minced. We are putting this in a food processor, right? This is going to do a good chunk of the work for us. Cilantro. So when we made the first sauce, it was a lot of leaves. It's okay if we have a little stem. We all know cilantro with stem, maybe like that big, right? We're not using the very bottoms, right? Those can be really kind of fibrous, but like something like that, it's okay, right? These are more tender, and they have a lot of flavor too. So I'm going to put, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these raw ingredients in. And just to give you another example, right? There's stem, right? Food processor is really going to break that down though, and it has a lot of flavor. So the first thing, before I add anything else, like I said, call them a little audible. I'm just going to put these together and just kind of get them going, right? The food processor is going to start chopping them up, right? 15 seconds, 20 seconds. So, you know, like I said, we're only going to have this go for 30 seconds. You know, one thing I wanted to say too is, like, you saw like how I said it kind of called an audible, and I put this stuff in before everything. Same principle, like earlier. We didn't just take like a whole jalapeno and throw it in there, right? We didn't just take like 2 whole garlic cloves and throw it in there. We did some chopping first, right? And we want to make sure that this stuff gets broken down, right? The more it's kind of broken down, the more flavor it's going to release, and that flavor is going to get into the mayo, and it's going to kind of permeate more. Also, the simple reason too is, like, we're not going to worry about biting into a huge chunk of garlic. Like, that's super important. So, like I said, we took that extra step at the first, which is chopping everything up. Then we took all that chopped up, we put it in here. We're just running it to further chop it up and make it small. Just got a little spatula, okay, and that's good, right? I can show you this, right? It's nothing crazy, right? It's not like a fine pulverization, right? But just like little bits, just to break it up, okay? Now, make sure that's on again, okay? Now we're gonna add the rest, ingredients. Piece of cheese, mayo. I believe this is like a cup of mayo, maybe a half cup. Sorry, I'm not shouting out all I think it was like 2 cloves of garlic. I think it was 1 jalapeno. Almost like a full bunch of salt. Not a full bunch, maybe like a half bunch of salt. I don't know, that was pretty much like a full bunch. Oh yeah, we're gonna throw, they call for a tablespoon lime juice. Okay, just kind of eyeballing it, right? Now, we're gonna let this do its thing. We're gonna let it work now. This sauce is going to have texture. None of the cilantro, the other thing too is like the garlic, right? But especially the jalapenos, they're still raw. So while things are still raw, that means, I'm not a super food scientist person, but like while the stuff's raw, it means its cell structure is kind of still intact. So it's never going to, if you think about, like, it's never going to get like perfectly smooth. In terms of like a puree, it's always going to have a little bit of texture to it. So we're just making sure that this is getting incorporated. We're just going to scrape down the sides. Okay. and we're just gonna let that go. I'll probably let that go like maybe like 30 more seconds. This is also one, like, I mean, you can just keep letting it go. Like, you just keep going and going and going, but it will reach a part, it will reach a point where it won't really break down anymore. So, pinch of salt. And you'll see once I kind of pull it out of here, you'll see what I'm talking about. Everything's broken down, but it's still. Okay, so if you can see that, okay, it's not like completely smooth, right? You can see specks of, whether that be cilantro, whether it be like just small bits of the jalapeno, or like chunks of the garlic that absorb some of the green, right? So it's not completely all the way smooth, right? So it's gonna have some texture to it. We have a lot of things in here. Raw garlic, strong. I mean, there's no way around it. Raw garlic is strong. Raw jalapenos are strong. So you have a lot of strong flavors in here. We don't want it to be like we don't want it to be so strong that we're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like where garlic has that heat to it and the jalapeno has that heat. So it's kind of cool with this recipe because it has mayo and cheese in there. So now you kind of have something it's not completely taking it away, it's just balancing it out a little more. So when you kind of think about like what we did with this first salsa, this one is like, it's got, you know, it's got a little bit of oil in it, but it's like mostly, it's like a water-based, a liquid base. So things are gonna be really strong, like the onions in it, the tomatoes in it, things are gonna be really strong. This has really strong ingredients in it, but because of the mayonnaise and cheese, it's gonna be, the goal is like, it's just a little more subtle. And also because it's creamy, like you don't want something that's creamy to be incredibly hot or spicy, because something that's creamy lingers on your palate because it coats it, right? So if this had like 10 jalapenos in it and you like dipped it in there, your mouth would just like be on fire, like because it would just absorb in your mouth. So anyway, I'll give it a try. It's delicious. It's really good. I could maybe put like a little more salt in there, but the salt right now, that little bit of salt I just added is more so for the finish. It finished a little flat. Lime juice, you know, at your discretion. I personally am not going to add any more because of the consistency of it. It's creamy, but if I added any more, it would be kind of like soupy, and that's not the point of this sauce. The cheese actually gives it a nice little like umami kind of like kind of funk almost. Like it's a really nice balance. And then yeah, like, you know, the mayo. Oh, I couldn't get that one out. The mayo, of course, is creamy. So we have two sauces, right? Two sauces, okay. Both very different, okay. They share, like I said, they share similar ingredients, but they're different. One's called ají, one's called ají verde, but you can see they're both green. So, so what you have right here is something that you dip the empanada in. This is something that's going to coat it, right? And it's going to give it a nice creamy texture. The cheese is actually really, really good in that. And then this one could probably, you know, tasting it, it could probably use a little bit more lime. I mean, I can add just, I don't necessarily want to just make too much of this or add like too much. But like because of this one is going to be the strong flavored one, or the more assertively flavored, and that's why it's going to be more of like liquidy, not something that coats your mouth, right? This is the one that just adds like pop, right? And then this one kind of subtles flavors down, but still provides freshness. So there's the two sauces. Here we are. We're pretty much done. As you can probably see, it's like we plated them, made them look nice, and we have our two sauces. And yeah, we're just going to kind of get into it and, you know, try them out.
Chef Kyle's talking too much.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. That looks nice. All right,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna crack mine open. I'm gonna take a little bit. Well, I'm gonna taste it first, and then I'll put some sauce. Nice and crispy on the outside, and almost like creamy from the potato.
Yeah, and then like it's really great because the ratio is really good. Like when we were making the filling earlier, like you just gotta kind of do it, but it's like you're making this like potato as a binder, but it's not potato-y. Like it's not like you're not like looking, like once you look at it, you probably couldn't tell that there was potato in there, but then when you taste it, it kind of melds all the flavors really well.
And that, so there's like this fattiness to it from obviously being deep fried. It doesn't feel greasy and it doesn't feel heavy, but that warm lime and herb based one just is so nice and sharp, just enough sharpness that it kind of cuts through a little bit of the fattiness.
Yeah.
And the starchiness of the potato and the corn. It's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Big dollop of the mayo-based one. Oh man,
It's really good.
it's really good.
Yeah, these are delicious.
It's creamy one, even though it's creamy, it's got that sharpness from the garlic, and I can taste the jalapeno a little bit more. And yeah, you get a little bit from, because that cotija is like, if Parmesan and queso fresco had a baby, that's kind of what it, you get a little bit of that like sharpness, little umami flavor.
Oh, it's cotija? I was saying cojita.
Same diff.
Well, you know.
We don't want to talk about.
Yeah, tomato. Yeah, but, you know, it was like a little fun experiment, and it is really good. You know, if you guys have any questions, let us know about recipes or whatever, but
Yeah, before we get to that part, you know, this is just one version of empanadas or dumplings or anything like that, so hopefully this feels like something you can do on your own. These are great if you want to make them ahead of time too. You can freeze them before you fry them. Just let them thaw beforehand, but there's so many different kinds out there. There's so many different versions. This is just one and a couple different ways to do it. So hopefully you feel like this is something you can do at home and kind of play around with again. But Chef Kyle and I are going to fight over these. And if you guys have any questions about recipes or anything else or any ideas for anything like this, you know how to email us, get in contact with us. I'll put it at the end of the video as always. But hopefully you guys try these out.
Yeah.
And enjoy them next time you're out as well.
Yeah. And one last thing we just want to mention, I mean, if you're alumni watching this, we miss you. We hope everything is well. But if you're part of the general public watching this, it is May 25th. Our next cohort starts in July. The application workshops are at the end of June 30th and July 1st. So if you're interested in learning more about the program or attending the application workshops, send us an email and let us know. Because we're getting ready for the in-person learning again. So. Awesome. Cool.
right.
Good job. This is great.
See you next time.
Bye-bye. These are so good.
Don't eat them all.
I won't.